Good evening, this is VK3SL, a test transmission on 160 metres and 2 metres on about 1860 kilohertz and 147.475 megahertz. Regular Friday night thing. We do this each week. It's a form of madness, but it happens. Life goes on, and this is a part of the rhythm of things. Speaking about the rhythm of things, let's kick off with the California Ramblers. Okay, we just heard the minor gaff. That's the California Ramblers with Adrian Rollini at the helm. These bass saxophone driving rhythm there. Pretty hot record. That's on a 33 and a third record from the archive of Mr. Prozud. It's one of his recent uploads. And it's an unissued pressing, actually. And I think it must be from a few years later, being a 33. But I might be wrong. He gives a bit of background to it, so worth having a look at the site. It's always interesting new material being put up, and he mentions that these California Ramblers are unissued, so good that we're getting a hearing of them, and it's nice to use them for test material. On 160 metres and 2 metres, VK3SL at the helm. Okay, well, we should have a real 78 as well, I suppose, so if I can just remember what to do here, and I think this is Waring's Pennsylvanians. Yes, from about 1930-31, Dancing in the Dark. So we'll let this one get everybody up in the aisles. VK3SL.
dancing in the dark, till the tune ends, we're dancing in the dark, and it soon ends, we're waltzing in the wonder of why we're here. Time hurries by, we're here and gone, looking for the light of a new love to brighten up the night. I have you, love, and we can face the music together, dancing in the dark, dancing in the dark.
All right, Waring's Pennsylvania. It's not overwhelming, that record. Should have had a bit of a pre-listen to that. It's just the flip side of what I played last week. So didn't really check it, but never mind. There's something a little bit more placid, I suppose. And let's kickstart again with an energetic recording of Gene Goldket's band. Now, we've been profiling the Goldket Orchestra and the Whiteman years. We're looking at Bix and his entourage. It's been a bit of a theme. Well, we're going to sort of move out of that zone for a bit and have a listen to the Goldket Orchestra after it reformed. As you might be aware, in the early 27, the band disbanded and Whiteman bought the musicians and it formed the core of his very famous ensemble in the late 20s. And the Goldket Gene Goldket was in financial troubles at that time, and then was able to reconstitute and get a fresh set of musicians. And within a year, he was recording again. So this one's in 1928. It's the Goldket Orchestra playing an arrangement of it's a McKinney's Cotton Pickers song, actually, one of Don Redman's arrangements, and it's very strikingly similar in style. Considering it's a white band, it's quite fascinating to hear this. I should have some features on McKinney's Cotton Pickers another time, but there's a raw energy in some of the black bands that's sort of incredibly compelling, and this is similar. So this is again a test pressing. This is from Nick Dello, who has a website, YouTube site, and puts up interesting things. So I don't know what the source is, but interesting stuff. Very high octane, great arrangement, and it just gives you an idea of how out there some of these 20s records were. So let's have a listen. Gene Goldket and his orchestra on VK3SL.
sing a song because nothing's wrong. My blackbirds are bluebirds now. My bad luck's gone on its way. Good luck had to come back to stay. My blackbirds are bluebirds now. I told a little whippoorwill, told a pretty daffodil, I told the preacher on the hill. The wedding's Sunday, honeymoon's Monday, yes, I'll be life's worthwhile. Look up with a great big smile. My blackbirds are bluebirds now.
Wow, and that tearing paper or kissing sound at the end. Yes, Gene Colquitt's orchestra, My Blackbirds Are Bluebirds Now. I was just reading a bit about that. They featured Sterling Bowes on the trumpet and Pee Wee Hunt, trombone amongst others, and it recalls an interview with Mr. Bowes, and he talks about that recording as being one of McKinney's Cotton Pickers' direct arrangement from Don Redman. And at that time, the Goldkett Band had relocated to Chicago. So a bit of a good story there. I'll have to compare that and perhaps other recordings from the Goldkett organisation with some stuff from McKinney's Cotton Pickers themselves. They made quite a few records, and that'd be really worthwhile doing, I think. Quite an interesting one to stumble on. Alrighty, we will continue. All right, we'll move into Whiteman Zone. I'm moving sort of out of the Bix orbit for a bit. This is actually during the time that Bix did have tenure with the Whiteman Orchestra, but he had significant periods of convalescence and was hospitalised and went back home for a bit and to try and dry him out. And during that time, Whiteman kept making records, and we've talked about Bill Shallis before, the arranger. Whiteman's arranger, he made some very beautiful arrangements, and I find them quite striking. And so here's one without Bix, and it's sort of a bit of a record that I can relate to at the moment, because we've had to say goodbye to our Japanese exchange student, and so it's been a sad week. It's been really sad saying goodbye to her, because she was very much a part of the family, and we all went out to the airport, and everyone was very upset. And so life goes on, but things like this have to happen. But here we have a Japanese Mammy, this record's called. It sort of reflects that interest in Oriental culture in the 20s. Quite an intricate arrangement. I did have a preview of this. So this is on a Whiteman Potato Head label from late 1928, I think. And we'll have a listen to one of these Bill Challis arrangements. I think all the other Whiteman players are the usual mob, but without Bix in this one. So let's see, what do? What do I push? Here we go. We'll set it going. Japanese Mammy.
Out in Yokohama, there's a Yokohama mama singing of the yama yama to a sleepy baby at the close of day. When he's tired of a sailor boy who swore he loved her truly, but he made her cry because he said goodbye and sailed away. Now the breezes say, little Japanese mammy, rock your baby to rest. The shadows are creeping
from out of the west. The star of evening is over his head, while blossoms are falling to make him a bed. Little Japanese baby, keep a slumbering through, till a Japanese sunbeams say good morning to you, while a Japanese mammy is watching alone, waiting for a sailor man who never comes home.
Okay, that Whiteman string section in full flight. Look, glorious arrangement and quite sort of unusual, that quasi-symphonic notions that the Whiteman band had at that time. And I think they're quite charming. That one wasn't hot, but it was interesting. The flip side of that is Let's Do It, I think. Yes, here it is. So let's have a flip. And I'll think about what we're going to do next. I think that last one was Austin Young was the vocalist. Here we have Jack Fulton and Fulton, Gaylord and Young. All three of them are singing. They are sort of the other rhythm boys. Crosby and Rinker and Barris must have been indisposed for this session. Or maybe they're playing tag team. Anyhow, let's have a listen to Let's Do It, the old Cole Porter song. VK3SL.
cheeks, do it, jabs, do it. Up and laugh a little laughs, do it, let's do it, let's fall in love. In Spain the best upper sets, do it. Lithuanians, let's do it, let's do it, let's fall in love. The Dutch in old Amsterdam, do it. Not to mention the Finn folks in Siam, do it. Take a Siamese twin, some Argentines without means, do it. People saying Boston beef and beans, do it. Let's do it, let's fall in love.
Yeah, the Paul Whiteman Orchestra from 1928. Very charming arrangement by Bill Challis of Let's Do It. And there's a lot in that arrangement. There's a lot of intricacy, and it really reveals the skills of the ensemble playing. It's very beautifully played. So good to hear a Whiteman disc that sort of it's probably not on the radar usually, because we mainly listen to recordings with Bix and Tram, and they're the ones that get the most of the airplay in almost every quarter. But that record was unknown to me, and apparently it's quite rare. So it's good to hear it. Now we might as well have some stereo spectacular material now. So if you feel inclined, maybe set your look. It's so staticky tonight, I don't think anyone's really going to want to listen in stereo. But if you feel inclined, the invitation's there, and I've got a stereo spectacular disc on the turntable, and I'm going to push out the mono button. I'm giving people time to set up if they feel inclined. And so we'll have one channel on 2 meters and the other one on 160. So you might get some weird phasing effects if you're listening on one or another forum. So just be patient, but we'll have a listen to this. It's a different disc, but it comes from the same AF label. Now that we played a different record from that series last week, and I think it shares some material. So apologies if you feel like it's Groundhog Day. But look, we'll have a listen. And what does it say here? We've got a bowling alley, and we've got a whistler and his dog. All very exciting. The mandolin orchestra, that'll be good. I like the sound of a mandolin orchestra. Clean sweeps, well, that'll be good for the people down the band. Even Russian roulette. Grim humour. With super stereo realism, that could be interesting. Model T Ford. There's even a submarine. Some very wet stereo fun. Wow. Sounds most interesting. What else? Sidewalks of Newark, the subway, the elevator. Instrumental trio, that'll be good. All right, I'm going to kick back and have a listen to this. I didn't really sample it much, but we'll see what happens. So AF Audio Fidelity DFS 77 stereo spectacular demonstration and sound effects. But this one doesn't have a dropping piano. Anyhow, this is VK3SL test transmission, and we're boring you silly on 160 meters and 2 meters, and there's a streaming service if you feel inclined. Not many on the streaming service tonight, so if it's really staticky and you want to listen in clean audio, just go to the blog page and have a listen. Although I don't think that's coming through in stereo on the blog page. Anyhow, see how we go.
Audio Fidelity Records presents a new stereophonic sound spectacular. The world of stereo is filled with spectacular sound surprises. As I was saying, stereo is full of surprises. In an instant, stereo can magically transport you to the concert hall. Or to a bowling alley. Or to a jazz band ball. Here's a vocalist we all know.
I went down to St. James Infirmary. Saw my baby there. She was stretched out on a long white table. So cold, so sweet, so fair.
All of us are born with the miraculous ability to determine the direction from which sounds approach us. We're able to tell in an instant where a particular sound comes from. In fact, we have an instinctive emotional need to be able to orient ourselves in terms of sound sources. Therefore, stereophonic reproduction offers us the most natural and satisfying way of listening to recorded sound. Yes, through the miracle of stereo, all of the brilliant sound, the dynamic presence, the complete situational aspect of a great orchestra or a great event can be reproduced in what is virtually a live performance in your very own living room. As long as we're getting a bit technical, I'd like to remind you that most women and children can perceive higher frequencies of sound than most men. This demonstration consists of a continuous sweep of audio frequencies from 50 cycles to past the limit of audibility. First, 50 cycles to 500 cycles. .500 cycles to 5,000 cycles. $5,000 to 10,000. $10,000 to 15,000. $15,000 cycles to infinity. By sampling the wealth of music and sound effects available on audio fidelity stereo discs, you can take a trip around the world without leaving your easy chair. Join me at the airport for a jet flight. First stop, Moscow, and a cartoon in stereo.
Only way to settle this argument is to play Russian roulette. Do you know how to play Russian roulette?
No, I don't.
You play Russian roulette this way. I have this pistol. One bullet in chamber. Spin cylinder. Cock the gun. Hold the gun to your head and pull the trigger. I go first. Good luck. Now you go. Here's the pistol. You lose.
What do you say we make it 2 out of 3?
Let's move on to Vienna before we all get shot. Getting over the Alps from Austria to sunny Italy might be somewhat of a problem in a Model T Ford. Now, here is speedier transportation to Paris. Watch out.
et le bec, et les pattes, et le dos, et la queue, alouette, 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 gentille alouette, alouette, je t'applumerai, alouette, gentille alouette, alouette, je t'applumerai.
A submarine offers a unique mode of travel to Port Said. That's if we make it.
Stand by to dive. Take her down.
Executive officer reporting, sir.
Engine room secure?
Aye, sir.
Torpedoes ready?
Aye, sir.
Rear hatch closed?
Aye, sir.
Forward hatch closed?
Forward hatch, sir?
Yes, forward hatch. Forwar.
They're playing our song. Hey, I'm up here in a whirlybird, hovering over the Plaza de Toros. Last stop, New York, the capital of the world.
Going up, step to the rear of the car, please. Second floor, ladies' bargain counter. Third floor, children's department, toys and games. 4th floor, cafeteria, tea room. Fifth floor, complaint department.
Look here. I want to register a complaint.
Next, please.
The dramatic separation of sounds is the most spectacular feature of stereo reproduction. For instance, on the left, now on the right. By means of stereo separation, it's possible to recreate for the listener the exact placement of musical sounds or other effects just as they were situated at the time of recording. The magnificent engineering in Audio Fidelity stereo discs offer the maximum stereo separation that can be reproduced by present-day playback equipment. Now, pay close attention to this stereo phenomenon. The stereo groove, which follows this announcement, contains two separate programs of music which sound like this when played together at the same time by the same stylus in the same groove. But by listening to either Channel A or Channel B separately, you have your choice of symphonic music or jazz, with minimum crosstalk or interference between channels. Lest we forget, let's get in all those traditional stereo effects. Anybody for ping pong? On the other side of this record, sample selections from Audio Fidelity's spectacular array of stereo discs.
So there we have it. That was the test record, the second in that series. Now, I think there's a lot of, I'll just fade that out. I think there's a lot of common material, actually. In fact, to the point where I was wondering if I have heard most of this before. But, so, yes, it was a bit of a potpourri of different things. I don't think the second half of it was as familiar, but I'll have to compare them back to back. Now, what does it say about the technical data? It says program elements of this recording were made on a 3-channel stereophonic Ampex tape recorder, Model 303, with modified Ampex Model 351 electronics. Telefunken, RCA, and Electro Voice microphones were used to achieve maximum presence and clarity. The original 3-channel master was re-recorded onto 2-channel stereophonic Ampex 302. A maximum signal-to-noise ratio has been achieved without oversaturation or distortion of the original master tape. And the edited 2-track symphonic master tape was transferred to a stereo acetate masters on a Scully automatic variable lateral and vertical pitch lathe. Oh, how I would love to have one of those. With a Westrix stereophonic cutting head, with special feedback electronic circuitry driven by a custom 200-watt amplifiers. While the total frequency range of 200 cycles per second to 20,000 cycles per second on this record may not be within the range of ordinary human hearing, or the UM3, nevertheless, inspection of the grooves with a microscope will show the etching of the upper dynamic frequencies. It is an opinion of the manufacturer that these frequencies were emitted from this record. A certain warmth of tone that is felt and sensed rather than heard would be lost. Okay, euphoric. For this reason, and to achieve the ultimate in our studies in high-fidelity stereophonic sound, we have gone to these extreme lengths. So there we have it. That is the blurb on this series on audio frequency. There's there's quite a few others here, so I think I'll dig out some more, and we'll have a bit more variety. Yes, that ping-pong stereo does sound very effective. And how can any test record... how am I saying this? How could you have a test record without a ping pong table and a game of table tennis and a train? They're obligatory. All right, next thing, I think I'm going to go back to the 20s, and I'm going to push the mono button now. And we might release that later on because there's some stereo offerings later on in the program. Last week, I featured a few recordings of the Georgians, or actually just one. There was one record of the Georgians. It was a record I pulled off the shelf, which I don't know how I came across it, and but it really impressed me, and I listened to it a few times, and it really sort of... it captivated me, to be honest, because of there's some very fine ensemble playing, and it's very symptomatic of that sort of change from the more staid brass band tradition to syncopated dance band music. That transition in the 20s has always been something that's fascinated me. It's been is that how did music change so dramatically in such a short time? And I'm going to flesh that out a little bit. So I will play the same record as I did last week. I found a better stylus profile, and also I have the turntable with noise reduction as well. So we'll give that a go, and then we'll have a little bit of a feature on the Georgians, and that's the and particularly two artists who played in that band, and they being Sylvester Ahola on trumpet and Al Filburn on the trombone. Now, if you just listen to those two artists alone, just the trumpet and the trombone on this record, you'll hear that there's a fabulous synergy going on. They're playing really, it's really great improvising. It's sort of a real departure from what was sort of the very staid traditions beforehand. So it's significant. And being an electrical recording, it's quite easy to hear. So we go back to 1926. We'll have another listen to it. It's a novelty record, and I think that actually gave them room to sort of cut loose. The Georgians was a part of Phil Sprecht's outfit. He had two bands. He had a band which played more sort of serious dance band music, and then he had at a local hotel, he had a group that played this novelty music and jazz inspired or syncopated music. So this is the group we're going to hear. I'm just going to fire this turntable up here, and I'll have to get the noise reduction on. It does make a difference, but my daughter's just walked in, can't sleep, and I think she will really appreciate this record for other reasons. So we'll put it on, and then I think those reasons will become very apparent. So here we go. VK3SL, I'm testing. We're listening to the Georgians and from 1926, and I won't announce this record. I think it speaks for itself. Now, is that going to work or not? Well, just wait. I've got to fade that one out. And let's see. Oh, wait a minute. This is all a bit tricky. It's a balancing act here, folks. I'll have to go back, put that back on, put this one on, and oh no! It's not going to open the output file, and it's not going to work. Oh, well, what I will do is I'll give this a bit of a... I'm going to persevere here because I want this to work. I'm determined. So I've replugged in the sound card. So it does this sometimes. Whenever I use the noise reduction thing, it does weird stuff. Now, go back again, put the record on, push start, and here we go. Here we go. 1, 2. Oh no, it's defaulted to something else. Oh no, maybe if I just push the needle into the groove, it might work. Here we go. VK3SL testing.
10 to 1 on spark plug.
20 10 on 4.
Bet. They're on. Horses, nutty over horses, Groovy over horses, she's a little wild. Daffy over horses, silly over horses, Once I heard her call me Sparkplug, brown eyes too. Yeah, she thinks I'm a horse's Bonnie Google at the altar. Maybe she will falter. Then I'll get a halter, just to make her mine. A woman's no means yes, I guess. A horse's A is a horse's yes. Oh, it's horses, just a lot of horses all the time.
Yes, good old Sparkplug won the match, and I'm going to switch that off. And unfortunately, there was some echo throughout that, and it's a bit unavoidable. I have to turn this off. A bit unavoidable because I think the microphone on the laptop was also active as well as the sound card. And I'll just take the needle off, and then I can speak. Yes, so we heard the Georgians, and that featured Sylvester Huli Ahola was his name. He's actually a Finnish background. And Al Filburn on trombone. Other great musicians in that band too. But and if you look up Huli Ahola on YouTube, you'll find his home movies. And he actually has movies of that band, members of that band and other musicians in the mid-20s, home movies. And they're quite interesting to see because you see them all horsing around. And but yeah, look, there's a certain sort of freedom in that playing. It seems to be quite apart from the very sort of fairly conservative type dance band arrangements of the time, and it's interesting to sort of get a window into that the way that the styles changed. And There is this wonderful interview with Sylvester Hollow much later in life, in 1985, when he was in his 80s. And he talks about his formative experience. In fact, he was actually training to be a trumpet player in the Boston Symphony, and he was working in brass bands and plantation bands and things, and getting all this really rich early experience and building his technique. And suddenly he listened, this is interesting, he heard some big Spiderbeck records, and if I made on Janet 1924, and it completely changed his life. He was suddenly sold on this new syncopated music, and then he was one of that new brigade of people imitating. We didn't really imitate Bix. He doesn't sound anything like Bix, but the way he sort of plays around the beat, the way he plays. You hear in Mr. Hooley's playing a predisposition to, how do you say it? He sort of half plays notes. He sort of ghosts notes. That's probably the best way to say it. So what it does is it sort of breaks up the rhythmic structure. So you get these sort of half played notes, and I think that sort of style of playing is quite. Was pioneered by Bix anyhow. So to that extent, I suppose the influence is there. Anyhow, we'll have a listen to another one of the Georgians, then I'll play a bit of the interview, and we'll hear the same musicians that were in the last orchestra and another sort of novelty track. This is pretty fun, actually, this record. I quite like it. I've listened to it a few times in the car. And it's a fun song called Cock-a-Doodle, I'm Off My Noodle, My Baby's Back. It's from February 1927, and we listen to the Georgians. This is VK3SL.
Cock-a-doodle, I'm off my noodle, and soon my arms will be round my baby's back. My baby's back. I made my mind up. We were all through before, but now we'll wind up, loving her more and more. Cock-a-doodle, I'm off my noodle, I'm all through dressing in black. My baby's back. My baby's back.
Okay, we just heard the Georgians with Cock-a-Doodle, I'm Off My Noodle, My Baby's Back from February 1927. Now, I was trying to describe that effect before, not very successfully. It's called half-valving or ghosting. And it enabled the players to sort of really to work around the Gogic points and in the music and really exploit the syncopations really successfully. Now, we'll have a listen to Mr. Hooley again. Here he is somewhere here. It's about 2 minutes in. I could hear a bit there and I thought, yes, exactly the effect I was trying to describe. And we'll have a listen. Here we go. Listen to Mr. Filburn on the trombone. Okay, so you could probably hear that half valving effect, which just gives music so much impetus. It's a really effective use of effective technique, and it comes out of the brass band tradition. So we'll hear a little bit of this. A little bit about the background. I absolutely love the Al Filburn's trombone solos and that as well. They're just full of interest, and again, they sort of they waft around the beat. I think that's the best way to describe it. Anyhow, I've been captivated by those particular sounds, and I've been trying to find them on recordings of the Georgians. They didn't make many in that particular formation. The players played in lots of other bands. Sylvester O'Hollo, or Hooley O'Hollo, the trumpet player I talked about before, he went to England and became really well known, played in lots and lots of bands in Europe and with Ambrose, and then came back to America and did stuff. His career is extensive. We're looking at the very beginning of his career here. So he's a musician which would be worth looking into further. Anyhow, we'll look on. Now we'll hear an interview with him. So this is Sylvester O'Hollo, and he talks about his background and his formative experiences as a kid, and you get some sense of the discipline that went into his playing, and you can hear that he's a very, very, very well schooled player. And I have a feeling that a lot of these dance band people came from the brass band tradition, and they were mentored by sort of really top players. I mean, the brass band tradition was absolutely huge before the First World War. It's always been a subculture, but it's very much the culture of mentoring young people, but in a very intense way. So you get these incredible technicians, people who can play these really, really difficult works. And he sort of alludes to that in this interview as well. So we'll have a listen. It's got a little bit of an example of his playing from a bit later on to sort of set the scene, and we'll hear Mr. Hooley O'Hollo, and he's really just talking about his early life, and but it sort of finishes up with that seminal moment when he found some Bix records. So it goes for about 15 minutes. I think you might enjoy it. This is VK3SL testing.
Good morning, Mr. Sylvester Ahola. Am I allowed to say Huli to you?
Oh, yes.
We just heard a fantastic piece of music out of 1928. Yes, and you were on that recording.
Yes, this is a Heartbreaking Baby by Adrian Rollini and Ed Kirkby, who was the manager of the California Ramblers, as you know.
Yes, so this was a song which composed by Adrian Rollini
and Kirkby. They're on the label, the record that I have.
That's fantastic. So
I never did mention to Adrian, although we were in London when I made it, I never got around to telling him that we recorded it.
It's just a fantastic thing. So composition, Adrian Rollini,
Ed Kirkby.
Sylvester, you tell your name and say the date and place where we are. Yes?
Oh, my name is Sylvester Ahola.
Yes.
And in Finnish, it's Sylvesteri Ahola, in case there are any Finnish listeners. And they nicknamed me Huli from way back in the early days. My father was called, we lived near a road, High Street in Lanesville, where we had a farm. And all these Irish families lived there. And they heard the name Ahola, so they started to call my father Johnny Huli. They called my brother Huli, and I was the youngest of the family. They called me Huli the trumpet. We were all Huli, so they came from that Irish neighborhood.
It was just short for Ahola, you see, it was short.
Yeah, it sounded something like Ahola.
No, that's true.
Even some of the announcers over here, when they say Ahola now.
That's true.
But in the...
so the place is where we are now?
Oh, now I'm back in Lanesville, having lived in Boston,
yes,
New York, and London. I'm back.
Today is October the 7th.
October 7th is today.
1985.
I'm back in Lanesville at my home that I built on my old swimming hole where I used to swim as a boy. It means a lot to me.
Yes.
The Finnish people, I'm of Finnish origin. My father and mother were both born in Finland. I was born right here in Lanesville.
Yes.
And my wife, Saima, she's Finnish. And she's also born here in Lanesville. So I've known her. I don't even remember meeting her.
That long ago.
Am I talking too much here?
When you started taking up the trumpet, Sylvester?
Well,
very early?
First of all, my sister was 10 years older than I was, and I was probably 6 years old. And she had a boyfriend that was a drummer in the Waino band.
Yes.
Väinölä band, that was a Finnish band, all Finnish people. And it was the Temperance Society band. He was a drummer in there, so he used to visit my sister, and he taught me the rudiments of drumming, snare drum, at the age of 5 or 6. So then at the age of 8, I made myself a homemade bugle out of a rubber hose and a funnel that they put kerosene in the lamps and stoves. And my people thought, gee, I sound very good playing those bugle calls on that circular trumpet. So they got my sister, who by that time was working for a band leader named Teal, a concert band in the early 1900s in Boston, T-E-E-L, Tear Easy Easy Love, Teal's band. And she was in the office. So she went down to Hanover Street in Savage's store, and they bought me a cornet for $10.
That's great.
That's how I started, at the age of 8.
So you are a really educated musician, you see. You were a fantastic sight reader, let's say, by the time.
In these bands, you see, there were 2 bands in Lanesville. The working men's band, which is called Socialist Band, and the Lanesville, the Finnish Temperance Society. That's 2. Then I also played in a Portuguese band, because I was a Lutheran. I went to the Lutheran church, but I was in a Catholic band too. The Acoriana Portuguese band in Gloucester, and another Finnish band in Rockport. So You couldn't, and this Lanesville band, the socialist band, was my teacher. He was a bachelor, and he didn't charge me anything for lessons. I go to his camp. He lived in a camp. He was a stone worker in the quarries. And he gave me free lessons, but he was a solo cornet in the socialist band. Although my people were farmers and dairy farmers, they worked 7 days a week, so they didn't care where I went. I was not a socialist, but I was in the socialist band. I sat next to my teacher, and I don't even remember learning to read music, and they rehearsed 3 nights a week, can you believe that? And played Thursday nights. That was the maid's night off for the Finnish people. They work for the rich people, Thursday and Saturday. So we played 2 nights besides the rehearsing 3, so one couldn't help but learning to play. And then the other band only rehearsed once a week.
Holy, when you came in contact with Adrian Rollini first?
Well, first of all, then on this trumpet playing, I better stick to that.
Yes.
When I was about 16 years old, no, I was in high school. A silent movie came to Gloucester called The Queen of Sheba. And they carried an orchestra with them, a small group, and they had to play in the pit, original score.
Yes.
And they wanted a trumpet player. So they asked me to do it. And I did. It was cornet parts in A cornet. And B flat cornet. I didn't have a quick change to A, and I didn't know how to transpose that. So I had 2 horns, and some numbers would be on A cornet, and I had on a chair, I'd pick that one up. So I did the Queen of Sheba show for several weeks and got away with it. So the leader said, unless your father owns a stone quarry and there's a lot of money, you better take some lessons. So I went right to Boston from the best teacher in Boston, Walter Smith, cornet soloist. And I studied with him 3 years. And when I left to join Paul Spector, I still would have kept studying, although he said he can't teach me anymore. But I was studying for the Boston Symphony. I went through all the transpositions: C trumpet, D trumpet, E flat trumpet, E natural trumpet, F trumpet, to transpose. And in fact, the week before I did leave to go to New York, I had heard the Bixby on the Riverboat Shuffle, those Jeanette records. And I thought, well, I think I go for this. So I studied as long as I could, and he was such a gentleman that I would have studied with him, gone there to talk to him anyhow, which I did until I left Boston. But I had good foundation, and that's why I did all those recording sessions, because I could read anything. If an opera singer wanted to change a half a tone down, I'd play it. Read it off. Just right off the same sheet.
I think you started to say about the week before you played the Messiah.
Oh, yes. The week before I left Boston, the Boston Festival Orchestra, concert orchestra, went to New Britain, Connecticut. And we played Handel's Messiah. And that has the trumpet sound. It's all D trumpet. Every note there I have to read a third higher. If I saw a C on the staff, yes, I'd have to play an E, a D trumpet part with my B flat trumpet. Yes. So that, and riding over with these symphony men in the bus as a kid, I'm in the back seat, they were all smoking pipes and cigars. And I was sick as a dog when I got to New Britain. But I got away with the show, so I did some long hair work and all kinds of band concerts. So I was exposed to following the stick, light cavalry, port and peasants, all the Viennese waltzes and unfinished symphony, whatever the bands played.
Just a minute. Sylvester, you are still in Boston, but you heard the records, the Jeanette records of Big Spider records. You were,
oh yes,
and then you came in touch with a complete new world, I would say.
From here, I joined a band named Frank Ward in Salem, not far, but I had to leave home and live outside. That happened to be, I had other offers from other bands. I'm glad I didn't take it. It was a modern band. Then they had the Big Spider records, you see. And It was Frank E. Ward. And if you notice, Rhapsody in Rhythm, that's on that Finnish record, an LP, I don't know whether you've heard it. That's been put, and it's on the Race to Rita album now. We recorded it in London, Rhapsody in Rhythm, that Frank E. Ward wrote, good musician. So I was lucky to join that band. I was with them 2-3 years. And then from that band, I went to the American House, my first real good job, where they had 2 orchestras in Boston, in a hotel. And that was the Henry Franks Orchestra. Because it makes a click. Let's see.
Right now.
Well, I'm in the American House now, and after that band, I had a job for the summer with Lou Calabrese in Newport, Rhode Island, from the American House. And Lou Calabrese was a society leader, very handsome man, good looking. He later changed his name to Lou Breeze, and he's the famous Lou Breeze from Chicago. Later he became Lou Breeze, but his name was Lou Calabrese. I worked with him one summer in Newport, Rhode Island, and we had a battle of music with Paul Speck, and he heard me. That's how why he hired me. So then I came back to Boston and joined Ruby Newman, a famous society orchestra in Boston. His very first orchestra at the Spanish room of the Hotel Buckminster. A nice job. And that's where I was, and I kept getting telegrams from Paul Speck. He wanted me to come to New York. Finally, I left to Ruby Newman. That's how we got to New York.
Okay, well, we just heard... Oh, I've got my seat on the edge of the headphones cord. Yes, we heard an interview from our German correspondent with Sylvester Abola, Huli Abola, trumpet player on a lot of 1920s discs, and that sort of profiles his early career. And there's several installments of these interviews, but that's probably the one that's most relevant to listen to. Just dealing with his formative influences and the very fact that he was inspired by Bix's records with the Wolverines. And no doubt a lot of people were listening to some of the race records with Louis Armstrong at the time as well. So there are a few sort of major figures. And I think the original Dixieland Jazz Band, ODJB, were also a very important influence in sort of changing styles. And of course, with the availability of gramophone records, it meant that suddenly everything could sort of just move in a frenetic pace. And we had these sort of melting pots of styles and just this intensity. So, yeah, look, it's a really interesting story. And I'm always fascinated by that, just that node, that point. You can almost trace it to about the year 1924-25, where things really started to take off. By 26, 27, it was just a whole new world of playing. But, yeah, it was good to follow on a theme, and it all came about from that one record, that record of Horses, because of the, well, frenetic's probably the right word for it. There's a sort of an abandon, and it's sort of crazy. It's crazy stuff. They're novelty records, and I think that's what sort of let them go even more. But, yeah, I find that all most interesting. So let's have another one. There's another one by the Georgians from the same period, and I think it's going to end this segment, but we'll have a listen to one called Spring Is Here. Same band, featuring the Mr. Ahola, and the other guy is that I'm intensely fascinated by is Mr. Filburn, Al Filburn. He's a trombone player. Don't know much about him at all. It's been very hard to find any information whatsoever about Mr. Filburn. But he seems to be really advanced in his ability to adopt the same techniques and to sort of dance around the beat and use that ghosting effect, which I think is really what defines that free playing. Well, let's have a listen. Spring is here. I'm VK3SL. This is a test transmission on 160 metres, also 2 metres, and streaming online as well. People are dropping off the stream like flies, so perhaps this material's a bit too esoteric. Hang in there, folks. We're going to have some different music soon. After one more, I've got to get this out of my system. This is what happens. I get a bee in my bonnet. VK3SL.
birdies in the trees start to sing their melodies, then you'll know that spring is here. When you see the BBDs waving gently in the breeze, then you'll know that spring is here. When you see the nurses pushing baby buggies in the park, and with the coppers they hold hands and spoon until it's dark. When the mustard bites the hot dogs and they all begin to bark, then you'll know that spring is here.
Okay, isn't that just so out there, that recording? Now check out that trombone break again at the end. Crazy stuff. Spring is here by the Georgians. So that was a bit of a sojourn into 20s nostalgia, syncopated dance music, and where everyone is snoring. I can hear you collectively snoring. Sorry, folks. All right, we'll move on. We will move on. There's another one. Can I play one more, please? I did have another one here. This is All the Stars Were Pretty Babies. They're fun. This is Paul Sprecht. So this is a... look, let's have a quick listen. I think it's good too. Well, there's so much in that performance. There's so much nuance. It was incredible. Oh, I just want to play that trombone break again. Where is it? Here it is. It's just after this bit. Check out Mr. Filburn. Okay, so how's that for a bit of trombone adventurism? I used to be a trombone player. In fact, back in 1984-85, I used to play in a Dixieland band, and I used to love playing the trombone. Should get it out and learn it again. But I have a particular appreciation for the trombone. So when I hear a really interesting player who does something harmonically interesting or tonally interesting, I listen out for it. So, right, well, I think we'll just let this fade, and that'll be the end of our little Georgian sojourn. And I think we'll sort of break the ice with something. It's a little bit, something a little bit different. Where am I? Which fader? So I need to play just a tiny little dedication to Mr. Harvey, Mr. Channel 9 Harvey, who died last week. And there is a private recording that's been put up on the tube of the March of the Movies. That's Louis Levy's theme, and this is Mr. Harvey's own arrangement of it. So it's sort of, since we've played a lot of Louis Levy's orchestra back when I started doing these test transmissions, we're listening to lots of Janet Lind, and we're listening to Louis Levy, who she sang with. So, but anyhow, March of the Movies was the Gourmet British Symphony's theme song, and Jeff Harvey made an arrangement of it for Channel 9. So I'll just listen to a bit of it. I don't think I'll listen to it all. But we'll have a dedication to Mr. Harvey, and I think this came from Graham Kennedy. Anyhow, let's have a listen. VK3SL, testing. Okay, we'll fade that one out there. I think it sounds much better with one microphone and recorded straight onto an acetate record or onto wax. And in that compressed mono sound, it just sounds too sort of wide range and commercial. I'm just too climatized to the sound of 78s. I think that's what it is. But I do have an objection to using 50 million microphones to record a band, though. And I dare say that's the case with this recording of March of the Movies. Yes, times do change. All right, let's see. We can. The fader's behind the screen, so it's a bit tricky. Right, we'll just let that one go. Moving on. What do we have next? Gosh, time's running out. Well, I'll put a bit of this on. I just sort of, it's been a bit of a emotionally rollercoastery week for lots of reasons. So, and saying goodbye to Kari. So I've got to let off a bit of steam. So this is what happens. Find a something some music that reflects my state of mind. So I thought? Well, I'll listen to the Descent into Hell, the Francesca Di Rimini. This is the after Dante, after the Inferno, and so yes. We'll have a listen to the Stadium Symphony Orchestra with Leopold Stokowski. I do have an LP of this and I couldn't find it. Isn't it crazy? Everything's a bit mixed up. Couldn't find it, so I have to use it off the tube. Hopefully we won't get an advert right in the middle of a sensitive spot. I haven't upgraded yet. But yep, we'll have a listen to Leopold Stokowski with the most white-hot recording of Francesca Di Rimini, and this will be a bit of primal therapy for yours truly, and with some of the most virtuosic and exciting orchestral playing ever recorded, to be honest. It's amazing. But I do come back to this when I need to vent. VK3SL. I'm going to fade in halfway because the piece goes for half an hour. We'll listen to the last 10, 12 minutes of it. Here we go. Mr. Tchaikovsky. Just a quick word, I've actually switched on the stereo if anyone wants to listen to this in stereo in full glory. Okay, well, we heard Francesca Terimini, a selection from Tchaikovsky's symphonic poem, and that's, of course, from the Divine Comedy, and the descent into hell at the end there, with the flames and the whirlwind of fire and yes, horrible. I don't know how you can describe that sort of music. It's incredible. Well, it's not horrible. It's amazing, but it's it defies description. All right. Well, it's sort of taken me somewhere. Or it's maybe cleansed me or provided a different point of departure now. So we'll just sort of resurface and from the hells, the dens of iniquity, and we'll hear something very peaceful now for a little while. This is in memory of our Japanese student who wrote us all the most beautiful letters each when she left the other day, and it was very moving because yes, it's we obviously meant a lot to her. And so in recognition of Kari, I'll play some traditional Japanese music now, featuring the shakuhatsu, which is the most beautiful instrument. It's the Japanese wooden flute, and you will follow that on with something short to finish. So we'll go for about another 10 minutes, folks, and then I'll have a quick listen. So, traditional Japanese music, yes, I'm still reeling after that sort of that frenetic whirlwind into the bowels of the earth. And incredible chords, aren't they, at the end of that? Just amazing stuff. All right, let's go. Let's hear this. Couldn't be more opposite. We now move into the Zen modality and some beautiful Japanese music. This is VK3SL, a test transmission on 160 meters and 2 meters. We've listened to the music of Rodrigo Rodriguez on the shakuhachi flute, Japanese folk music. And, it's improvised music, and I'll just turn that little advertisement off. And we'll finish off now with a little bit of music of Caccini. I know Mr. Fleming, who's probably listening to this, enjoys the music of Caccini, as do I, and probably Frank and others. This work's long, so I'll just play the last section of it, actually, and then I will stand by for any possible callbacks. So thank you for listening in tonight, and putting up with the bilge. There's a lot of 20s bilge tonight. I got on my high horse there. But the Tchaikovsky might have been a bit of a thrill to listen to. It certainly raised the hair on the back of my neck. And I love the sound of the shakuhachi flute. I will have to listen a lot more to that sort of music. It's very plaintive and meditative. It's wonderful. Alrighty, let's have some Caccini to finish with. It's Ave Maria by Caccini. It's sung by a choir here. I think it's an arrangement, but it looks like it's quite good. So we'll let that ride us out for the day, and we will hopefully be here next week, all being well. And again, my thanks to the listener. This is VK3. Wait a minute. This is me taking my time here, working out which photo to use. VK3SL, now signing with all good wishes.